Hi, I'm Ravi. I'm a longtime practitioner of the spiritual path. Today, I want to share some insights about spirituality. So, the topic for today is the Divine Mother, understanding the Divine Mother in the context of spiritual practice, and working towards a spiritual practice that incorporates the Divine Mother. So, what is the relevance of the Divine Mother, and how can we explain the Divine Mother? And I was trying to create a really punchy and to the point video, and I like to try to get to the points and deliver a lot of value up front. But with this topic, it was difficult for me because I think there's a lot of I think those who are devotees already of the Divine Mother will be familiar with this, and understanding why it's important to venerate the Divine Mother and contact her in our spiritual practice. But my goal is really to reach those who might not be as familiar with the Divine Mother aspect of the divine, and who might not be aware of why it's important to contact this aspect of the divine and how to understand her and yeah, why this is even relevant. I would love for somebody who is not really in touch with this energy to come away from this video with um, a little bit more contact with this energy and more involvement with it and seeing how it can fit into their lives. But for that, I'll need to take a little bit more discursive approach to getting into the problem and delivering the benefits. So if this sounds interesting, I hope you'll listen further. So one common way of understanding the Divine Mother is um, phrasing it in terms of a contrast to masculine and feminine aspects of the divine. So the common move from this kind of feminist wave of critical scholarship and critical religious practice in the late 20th century, growing out of the broader feminist movement in the 20th century, was to say, look, all your conceptions of God actually have this implicit masculine orientation towards it. And there's actually this whole history of other feminist, not feminist in their original conception, but there's this whole other history of um, approaches to God that do not have this masculine orientation. So if we think of the divine in Judeo-Christian thought as being very concerned with order and strict morality and bearing harsh duties and rigid expectations around home life and this very ordered, rational approach to living into life and to religious practice. We can contrast that with a possible feminine version of the divine that involves love and beauty and play. And we can some of these authors would point out how, in history there have been these actual goddesses that were venerated instead of a Judeo-Christian masculine orientation towards God. There were societies that venerated feminine creator gods and had a different value system around that. So again, this was a common approach in the late 20th century, and it still has its effects even going on today. A lot of the interest in the divine feminine probably traces from those authors that were writing at that time. So a few examples of authors writing about that are Merlin Stone, When God Was a Woman, Starhawk, The Spiral Dance, A Rebirth of the Ancient Religion of the Great Goddess. So if you're interested in this line of thinking, there's a lot more where that can come from, and I'd suggest using ChatGPT, which is where I drew some of those references. Um, so I'm actually not actually very well versed in this literature, and my own experience is from a different school of thought, which is the Hindu and post-Hindu school of thought, specifically the post-Hindu thought of Sri Aurobindo, where the Divine Mother um, has a supreme importance, and is recognized as important in the other leader, the co-leader of the Sri Aurobindo movement, who was Mira Alfassa, a French woman who moved to India to work with Sri Aurobindo and was regarded as an incarnation of the Divine Mother. Um, so my understanding of the Divine Mother principle comes from understanding the energies around first of all, the understanding of the Mother in Sri Aurobindo's thought, and second of all, the specific spiritual energies that I associate with this female saint or yogini, or however you want to think of her, Mira Alfasa. Um, but if I were to just to talk about the glories of Mira Alfasa, I think that wouldn't be of interest to those who are not as deeply involved in this Sri Aurobindo school as I am. And again, my goal is to reach people that might not be as familiar with the idea of the Divine Mother or why it's important um, to to worship Mira Alfasa or anything like that. Going back to the goal of this video, one way to frame this video is how do I explain the Divine Mother energy that someone like Mira Alfasa has to someone who's not familiar with this specific um, post-Hindu saint or any of the other Hindu female deities that she is kind of understood in reference to. Yeah, so with that problematic, let's go into this and try to explain this Divine Mother energy and its importance for our spiritual lives, and why it's beneficial for us. So just as I was talking about the kind of critical lens that feminist scholarship put onto religious practice in the 20th century, we can do the same thing with kind of the spiritual seeking practice. So feminist religious scholarship was often critical of the Judeo-Christian tradition, but in spiritual circles, which we think of as kind of being past the Judeo-Christian tradition. There's also this underlying masculinist orientation that's a little bit subtle and goes into actually quite deep philosophical waters. So my claim is that the base layer of spiritual seeking in the West is kind of this crossover between Hindu Advaita Vedanta and Buddhism, which at its surface level is just presented as this idea that, if you meditate a lot, then you will find God, and basically you be spiritual by meditating and taking the fruits of your meditative realization into your life, and by doing so, you'll get closer to God. That's kind of the big picture of contemporary spirituality that I think the high level. And the reason why we meditate instead of praying because meditation doesn't require us to believe in a sacred text. It doesn't require us to go to any rituals that don't make sense. We can just have this direct experience of this positive force in our lives. I was saying God, but a lot of people don't conceive of it as God, but this supreme good emanation that comes out of experience and meditation. So if we do that, it'll have these beneficial effects. And this comes out of the translations that these various religious figures from the Hindu Vedanta tradition and Buddhism brought into the West and kind of disseminated in the 1960s around this line of thinking, where if you meditate a lot, then you grow closer to some absolute principle, and you don't need to believe in religion. You just focus on the meditation of it. Um, the thing is that these schools of thought, if you dig into their philosophical basis, they actually have some assumptions that I think are not necessarily palatable to people if they really think about what they're saying. Um, which is Advaita Vedanta has the idea that the world is Maya and essentially an illusion, and that you grow closer to God to escape this world of illusion. So what you're doing by meditation is not meditating in order to have these positive experiences and bring them into your life, but actually meditating in order to free yourself of the delusion that you are living in a meaningful world and grow closer to God. It's a little bit similar with the Buddhist tradition, where you're not really meditating for the idea of having a beneficial effect on your life, but meditating to escape the cycle of continued involvement in life, to escape that cycle of rebirth and get to a higher poise of nirvana, where you're free from the cycle of having to be involved in life. Um, so yeah, this is uh an idea of the world that I think um a lot of people, if it were sold to them like that, it wouldn't be as appealing, I think. Um so while this is kind of the philosophical underlying basis of these traditions, there are other traditions from the Indian subcontinent that weren't ported over as neatly, that do not have this idea of just escaping the world into this absolute principle, but rather uh, uh, participating in the world in other ways. So the primary a couple of places in Hinduism. First of all, just the richness of Hindu applied religious practice, where you're not appealing to these high philosophical doctrines. It often venerates the female aspect of the divine, venerates these female deities like Lakshmi and Kali and Durga, um, and their qualities. Again, seeing how those qualities of these deities can be applied to life without necessarily thinking about the ultimate justification that life is leading to this kind of abstract absolute principle, but seeing how these deities affect life as it is. But another line of thinking is the line of thinking from Tantra. So this was another school of Hindu religious seeking, um, from the Indian subcontinent. And it was very highly influential on Sri Aurobindo when he was forming his synthesis of philosophy. And the idea of Tantra is that the manifested world is not just an illusion, but is actually a path of realization, can be a path of realizing God. So by participating in the forms um, of the manifested world, you can actually grow closer to God. So participating, especially in its ideas of pleasure uh, and energy, um, and power, qualities that were kind of shunned in this approach where you just meditate everything away and don't really concern yourself with pleasure or power. Um, so Tantra actually engages with these. And so there's in the West, the phrase Tantra is often associated with exclusively with sexuality, and that's not really the part of it when you it's part of certain schools, but is not the broader picture uh philosophical lens on Tantra that I'm explaining here. Um, so the other thing is that in this tantric worldview, the um the manifested world is represented as a female principle, uh, as opposed to the absolute being thought of as a male principle. So in these schools of thought, you'd have the female manifested principle that is uh, an energy based manifestation of the world, and an absolute masculine principle that is all potentiality but is not manifested in the world. And the core analogy is that the mother principle is that which gives birth to creation. So just like a mother gives birth to a child in a creative process, um, the mother principle takes the potentialities inherent in the male principle and gives birth to a created world in which the created world is kind of the child of the divine mother. So it's an essential analogy that takes place here. And so all the creation that takes place in an ongoing way is also analogized to the mother principle. So the creative energy of the universe that continues to create is seen as a feminine principle. So this is a very interesting school of thought to me, and it's I think one issue with it, if you're just a person wandering into this video wondering about the Divine Mother, is that it's not an absolute proof what I'm saying. There are other ways of viewing the world. There are these scientific conceptions. There are these other mythological ways of viewing things. So it's this isn't a clean proof, I think. But it's a very again a very useful and fertile way of coming into contact with certain spiritual energies and ways of thinking that I think are fruitful for spiritual practice. And so that's the kind of the pitch I'd make to somebody wanting to entertain some of these ideas. Um, so with that said, one deficiency of this, philosophical model of female energy analogized to Shakti. The name of that female energy is called Shakti in these traditions, but analogized to the female principle, is that the disadvantage of these philosophical ideas is that they give you no clue to the actual experience of the Divine Mother. Um, so I was talking earlier about how I became familiar with the Divine Mother energy by coming into contact with the energy of Mira Alfasa, Sri Aurobindo's partner, and I regarding her as my guru and feeling her personality and the effects of the relationship of the personality that she had on me was my initiation um, to understanding this energy. But in contrast, this kind of mental philosophical model of, this male absolute and female created world doesn't really give you a sense of that energetic quality, that quality of personality. And that's really what I want to convey in the video. But I think what a philosophical lens can reveal is why it's important. So why is the Divine Mother important? She's important because she's associated with this energy of the loving consciousness that birthed the manifested world and cares for it. Whereas the energy of the Absolute is a little bit more indifferent to what is happening and kind of content to witness the play of happiness and sorrow and uh, all these things. So if you retreat into the absolute, there's no telling what kinds of events might actually happen. You're just kind of identified with this absolute nirvana principle or I am principle and not involved in the world. Whereas the Divine Mother principle is the loving consciousness that wants to see its creations achieve their fullest essence um, and cares for it. And so the Divine Mother principle is this important cosmic principle underlying the creation of the world. And I think also the Divine Mother principle is important because the Divine Mother holds the key to an integral yoga. Um, so I talked about integrality in a little bit in some of these previous videos, but the integral ideal of spiritual practice is one where all parts of your life are taken up and made a part of your spiritual practice, and you're not just meditating, you're not just doing one form of practice, but you're making your entire life your spiritual practice. But this can only happen in a vision of the world where the entirety of your energy is connected to the divine principle. So if the divine principle can only be contacted through meditation, then what you do at work or in your relationships or in your other things you do, like eating food or arranging your daily habits, that has nothing to do with the connection to the absolute you have through meditation. So it's therefore not really of importance. But if the entire created world is this manifestation of the Divine Mother, and it's all connected to her because it's all a manifestation of her energy, then everything becomes relevant to a yoga because every aspect of that life is a manifestation of that creative mother energy, and can be related back to her and can be made more perfect and more beautiful and more an expression of the divine and not a lower principle. So that is a kind of philosophical explanation, a philosophical overview of the Divine Mother and why the Divine Mother principle can be relevant in your spiritual practice. Um, so let's go over some concrete ways that you can tune into the Divine Mother energy and more generally open to a yoga guided by this Divine Mother energy or Shakti as it's called in these Hindu traditions. So the first and most effective way, I think, is to come into contact with female deities and saints and feeling their personality qualities. So again, this is how I was personally started to understand the quality of the Divine Mother. I started reading Sri Aurobindo in 2009, and it seemed like a very lofty philosophical view, and I was understanding these philosophies and how they fit together. But he kept talking about the Divine Mother, and I had no idea of what that corresponded to in my experience. But when I started to look into the writings of Mira Alfasa, I'd read what she wrote. I would look at the records of disciples of their interactions with her. I'd get a sense of her personality. I'd get a sense of her um, what she thought and how she lived in the ashram. And through that formation of personality, I got a sense of what the divine personality would be like. And I could start to feel the energy that, oh, this is what the Divine Mother is all about, and this is what Sri Aurobindo is talking about. And the thing is that it's a really specific energetic quality that I don't think you necessarily know to look for if you didn't know that it's important to look for it. Like I can imagine if somebody didn't read these sections where Sri Aurobindo talks about the Divine Mother, you just have this abstract philosophy that you have no idea that it contains this other dimension to it. And I think a lot of the people that engage with Sri Aurobindo aren't from a philosophical perspective and not a holistic spiritual yogic perspective are not really aware of the mother aspect of Sri Aurobindo and his the work of Mira Alfasa, and so they kind of miss this entire dimension of it. But you really have to look at the text telling you that you have to look at this aspect too, and then you say, "Oh wow, this is this whole other energy." It's like if you didn't know about the color blue and people were always referring to blue, and you didn't know that it's this whole other color frequency, and then one day you see the ocean and you say, "Oh wow, that's blue that everybody's talking about." This is a whole new experience that I was unaware of. So hopefully, if you're not familiar with the Divine Mother energy, maybe this will inspire you to kind of seek it out because I'm saying, this is really important energy to be aware of in the cosmic scheme. So yeah, maybe this will inspire somebody to do that. The second method I want to share is being open to beauty. Um, and so one thing that Mira Alfasa said about beauty is that it's the perfection of form. So the play of the Divine Mother is this play of creation, this play of form, and when she perfects these forms, they have the quality of beauty. And then we say, "Oh wow, that's a perfect form. That's kind of a exposure of our soul to this perfection, and it uplifts us." So beauty in architecture, or beauty in painting, or beauty in dress, beauty in speech, all of these are qualities of the Divine Mother, and if we keep our eye out for them, we will. And also, you have to have an attitude of uplifting of coming into contact with that beauty to uplift the soul, because it's also possible to just become an aesthete and just be concerned with beauty and not really improve yourself as a person through it. Like a lot of artists are that way, and that's their prerogative. But if you want to uplift yourself towards the Divine Mother, have an attitude that sees that beauty as a reflection of the Divine Mother and her qualities. A third practice is to sort through the emotions to find the influence of the soul. So again, just as beauty is associated to the Divine Mother, the soul has a special relationship to the Divine Mother. If we think about the soul as the divine spark that kind of joins the unmanifested absolute quality of the divine to the manifested world, then it makes sense why the mother principle would be associated to that because the mother principle is the aspect of the divine that creates the manifested world. Um, and the soul is can be contacted through any level of the being, not just the emotions. But for most people, the emotions are the easiest way to contact the soul. But I say sort through the emotions to find the soul and not just listen to your emotions because your emotions are just as they're not the same thing as the soul. They're just a place where the soul can be heard if you choose to look for it. Um, so there are different patterns that people have in terms of some people might be very numb to their emotions, or some people might feel a lot of emotions around different relationships, but it's a very tumultuous relationship with their emotions and not a feeling of the steady soul qualities that come out in the emotions. So in my experience, the emotions that have to do with the soul are kind of very subtle and very fine emotions. They're like not coarse fabrics, but very fine threads of emotion that are subtle and warm, and this subtle happiness or this subtle warmth or this subtle sense of peace. And they're not very loud, but they're very high quality vibrations and emotions. So I would recommend to somebody who's just starting to look through their emotions to find this is to yeah, just observe their emotions throughout the day and notice which ones are the highest and most beautiful and give a sense of light and peace and happiness and beauty and all these high qualities that we'd associate with the soul and which emotions just kind of make you go up and down and lose yourself in getting yeah, feeling all sorts of different experiences that don't feel like they're leading to something higher and more uplifting in you. and that will bring you closer to the soul, and that soul quality is again identical with the Divine Mother. A fourth practice is to follow energy rather than rational planning. Um, so this probably deserves its own video because it's a very subtle topic, and we don't want to throw out rationality and being reasonable and making rational plans to just do whatever our instincts say. But ultimately, the Divine Mother works through energies that are not solely the mind. If we think about the entire creative flux of the universe, there's bats and cars and sunshine and all these different passions and enthusiasm. And there's rationality as well. There's mental planning that goes into a lot of this, but it's not the only thing. So to be open to the full spectrum of what the divine wants to manifest, you have to be open to the full spectrum of energies that want to move through you, and not just get caught up in using the mind to plan out your steps. Um, so as you become more open to, and you're going to make mistakes, and the key is to start to develop a finer and finer intuition about what energies you should listen to and what energies are destructive. But eventually, yeah, you want to be in this place of following energy and following intuition in a very kind of outflow state, kind of being this um, kind of conductor for the energies that the Divine Mother wants to manifest into the world. And as you start to feel those energies, you also feel the love that is kind of associated with that principle of energy, because it's not just energy like a battery's energy. It has an emotional quality to it as well. Um, and that is the quality of the mother that is coming through in that energetic outpouring. So the last practice I'll share is to surrender. Um, and this is a very deep practice. Um, and it can be useful in a lot of different situations. One of the most powerful times when surrender is a good practice is, of course, when we're facing difficulties and, this insurmountable problem that you don't know how to solve, and you're in emotional difficulty and a mental difficulty because you can't see how to solve it. So you just take that problem and you give it up to the Divine Mother and say, I can't see how to solve this, but I just trust that whatever outcome you want for this, because you are the creator and master of the universe, that's for the best, and I give it up to you, and feel yourself offering those confusing sensations up to the mother and letting her do what she will with them. And you feel lighter because all that pent up agitation is, at least some of it is able to leave your system, and some of it probably will stay agitating you. But ideally, you can give it all up and get to a sense of peace. So that's one powerful way to use surrender. But it doesn't only have to be about the negative things in life. It can also be about the positive things. So you surrender just when you're having a good day, and surrender to the Divine Mother's will and the Divine Mother's energy. Say, um, this is my life that I'm living today, and I offer it as a gift to you. And feeling that motion of giving yourself up to the mother. So again, if we're not in touch with the energy of the mother yet, you can use this conceptual structure where you imagine what would it be like for a being to be the mother of the entire universe. Um, so I wouldn't recommend necessarily basing it on one's own mother, because I think there's often a lot of baggage that goes into um, that relationship. But you can imagine what an analogous person um, might be like if they were really uh, in charge, or kind of caretaking the entire universe, what the qualities of care and love, and also severity sometimes, and good order that would need to be put into it, that it takes to kind of mother the whole cosmic scheme. And you can just take whatever emotions or whatever is going on in you and surrender that to the mother. So this is a practice that I used for many years, and was even my primary practice for some years. So I think it's a very useful one for getting in touch with the mother consciousness. Um, yeah, so that is my overview on kind of philosophical and practical overview on contacting and understanding the Divine Mother for your spiritual practice. I hope this was insightful, and if so, please like and subscribe and share the video if it was useful. And yeah, I'll be tuning in next week for more insights. Thanks for listening. Bye.